In this video, I'm going to explain the 3 stages you need to go through to take better landscape photographs. I'm going to explain the planning process, the settings you should consider when shooting your images, and finally give you some tips on how you can get more creative with your shots. Let's get into it. Let's start with planning your drone shoot. The first thing you need is clarity. What do you need these images for? Are they for you or are they for a client? Where will they live? Are they for mobile, desktop, or print media, or all 3? What's the style and the mood you're going for? All of these questions need to be answered at this stage in the planning process. Getting this kind of clarity in the beginning takes the guesswork out and allows you to be more creative on the day of the shoot. When it comes to planning your shoot, one of the best resources you have available to you is Google Earth. This software allows you to go straight to the location you're shooting at and start getting an idea of what you're dealing with. In the corner of the screen, you can see your altitude, which is incredibly useful when flying in restricted airspace and you can't go above a certain height. Flying around virtually like this gives you an impression of what you'll be able to see at that height and from that perspective. So already, without going anywhere, you're already working on your final composition. Another really cool feature of Google Earth is the sun slider. You'll find it in the top tool panel. This slider allows you to select a date and time range and see the relative position of the sun. This lets you plan the best time of day to shoot, taking into account the direction and quality of the light. Once you have a plan for your shoot, you know what altitude to fly at, the best time of day for the light, and you have an idea of what perspective you want to shoot, I recommend going and doing a scout shoot. This means you'll go to the location, preferably at the time you've chosen, and shoot a lot of photos. Be creative and find compositions you think will work. Going out like this gives you a really good idea of what to expect on the day in terms of the lighting and the weather conditions. Ultimately, doing this will make you better prepared for the actual shoot. Once you get home from your scout shoot, choose the compositions you like the most and look at any potential issues you might have with your shots. Use these images to get more clarity on what you should do when you return. Okay, now let's get into the shooting. I'm going to share some advanced tips here that you may want to experiment with on your shoot. First and foremost, you need to be shooting in RAW and exposing your images manually. Shooting in RAW will give you the most control over the individual files in post, and exposing manually will give you the most control over the exposure and the sharpness of your images. You always want to be in control of your images. That way you can make adjustments if something's not working. If you decide to shoot a low light scene, so at dusk, at sunset, or at night, you should experiment with image stacking. Image stacking is a technique that involves taking around 10 images from exactly the same perspective and then stacking them in Photoshop. Because your drone is not perfectly stable, it moves slightly from shot to shot. When you stack the images in post, the color noise that you would normally have from having a raised ISO is reduced significantly. This results in much cleaner images. On the other hand, if you decide to shoot in a high dynamic scene, meaning there's a large exposure difference between the darkest and the lightest part of your image, you may want to experiment with exposure bracketing. This technique involves taking 3 to 5 images from the same perspective again, but this time taking a variety of images, some of them underexposed, some of them exposed normally, and some of them overexposed. This gives your image, your final image, a much higher dynamic range than would normally be possible with a single image file. Once you have all of your planning out of the way and you have clarity over what you need to shoot and how you're going to shoot it, actually getting these shots will be the easy part. You already know where the drone needs to be and the settings and techniques you'll use to capture the shot. The advantage of all this planning is that once you're out there, you can get those must-have shots out of the way quickly, and then you can get creative. Once you have all the shots you need, you can start playing around and getting more creative shots. You can start playing around with the light by moving a drone around the scene. You can play with the focal length by using wider or longer lenses. You can play with the composition by adding or removing foreground elements, or with the perspective by getting up really high or really low. Some of these shots, you didn't plan for, but they might end up being the shots that the client really loves or that you really love. So just get out there and just see what you can come up with. Be creative. Ultimately, there's a lot that goes into creating great landscape photography with your drone, but it all starts with planning and having a solid plan of what it is you need to capture and how you're going to get out there and capture it. Will give you the freedom to be creative and to experiment with your compositions. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more drone photography tips. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.